This entrepreneur knows how to lock amazing luxury deals for travelers all over the world. Please show your appreciation and welcome co-founder and CEO of Secret Escapes, Alex Saint. Welcome. Thank you. Take a seat, Alex.
They're working you hard this afternoon, aren't they?
They are working me hard this afternoon. It's a joy to be here, and especially to interview you. Right, so a fireside chat, they call these. Right, so you've survived, I think would be one way of putting it. When Secret Escapes launched, you were one of many, do you like this title, flash sales?
Flash sales is fine.
So you're okay with flash sales?
Yeah. We're not. It's had its knocks in the past, but we're proud of where we are.
You were one of many. You probably know how many there were. You probably counted them because they were competitors for a while.
Yeah.
You were one of many, and now you're one of very few. Why did you manage to, or how did you manage to get to this point, while so many of them fell by the wayside?
There's definitely not one obvious reason, but I think we focused incredibly hard on getting great product. And I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about inspiration this afternoon, and the difference between a standard hotel product and something that is inspiring, I think is hugely important. But I think also we really focused very hard on execution. We prioritized absolutely ruthlessly. I have to give a huge amount of credit to my co-founder Tom for having driven the product and marketing effort. Incredible amounts of test and learn. It was a real MVP approach. So we took a very scientific approach to a startup, I think, in a space where lots of people just piled in after Groupon and just copied what they saw. And I think they were blindly trying to follow something that they didn't fully understand. We started with it was almost like a chemistry set, and we ran experiment after experiment, and that's how we grew the business.
But that was kind of the background through the previous company, wasn't it? That you had that scientific approach there.
Yeah, and I think everything we do is rooted in data and logic. If you look at the people who run the business, we're a very heavily, from an academic perspective, very science-based background. We've got 2 physics PhDs in the senior management team. We're a heavily scientific management team, and we really believe in the power of data.
Right, so there's something hugely ironic there, where you say you're a data-driven, the appliance of science and all those kind of things. You then went and did TV advertising,
well,
which is one of the most unscientific, apart from outdoor advertising.
Well, I think the interesting thing is it was perceived to be, and when we started TV in 2012, we wouldn't have done it if we didn't believe that it was possible to reduce it down into the same kind of analytical framework as we do with digital marketing. So and when we started in 2012, there were very few digital companies who were spending it at scale. And yet, because our marketing effort was as it was, all of our digital marketing was tracked, and we had a baseline of organic traffic. And because the response to one of our TV spots is so concentrated, we get something like 60% of the response within 2 minutes. Within 2 minutes of running a spot, you can see these big, very pronounced spikes in the chart, which correspond to individual TV spots. And so you can effectively optimize a TV campaign exactly like you would a digital marketing campaign. So you can, and actually down to your cohorts of members, you can say, these members joined from daytime, these guys joined from this particular time of the day of the week, this genre of program. And so you've got a whole layer of analysis that you can do around TV that had never really been done before. And now in the intervening 6-year period, there's been a huge explosion of the number of companies advertising on TV because the agencies that we were using got their heads around how to work that methodology, and now there are some quite sophisticated tools that allow you to do that.
There were others in the space at the same time that were online companies that were also trying TV, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
So was it the creative, the girl who was bouncing on the bed and
well,
such a great deal and all that?
And I think we thought for a long time. I think there's definitely strong element of success that comes from the creative. But I don't think it's entirely down to that. We've now run through several sets of creative and have always managed to replicate the results. And we've done it in Germany at huge scale. We certainly have done it in the UK. We've been successful on TV in the US, all around Europe. And I think ultimately it boils down to having a replicable methodology and this analytical framework, which allows you to optimize the campaign. You can burn a lot of money very quickly on TV if you're not confident about which spots are driving the value. And I think that's the key for us. We've used that same method.
Right. So one of the suggestions when you were going through, and we'll come to funding anyway, but one of the suggestions when you were raising money, was that because you were using it to burn on the TV ads. Is that right?
I wouldn't say burn. We definitely
invest.
Yeah, to invest. Yeah, absolutely. So our first big round of funding, which was Series A in October 2011, was specifically about testing new methods of marketing. So we'd done the usual suite of digital advertising, which is primarily search and Facebook, and we wanted to see if we could substantially accelerate our marketing effort in the UK, because what we knew was if we could acquire a member for a certain cost, we knew we would get a certain lifetime value from that member. And what we needed to do was find ways to fill the top of the funnel with as many members as we could at an acceptable cost. And TV was the one channel that had the potential scale that could change the game for us and effectively enabled us to double our monthly marketing spend. And so, yeah, the funding, the original funding, was entirely about testing that as a medium, and thank goodness it worked.
Indeed. So when you went to investors and said, we want to raise X amount of money and we want to spend it on TV advertising, did some of them just shut the door and tell you to go away? Or?
No, because I think they knew, so it was existing investors, and the key was that they knew that we would take a scientific test and learn approach to it, and they knew that we weren't just going to burn, I mean, it sounds like a relatively small amount of money at the time. We raised just under 3 million quid. Our first month of TV advertising, I think, cost us 250, which was a big chunk of money for us. But it enabled us to learn very quickly. And of course, they knew that we were going to take an approach which was going to allow us to evolve and not just splurge 3 million quid on TV and not have any idea whether it had worked or not.
Okay. I mean, it's just an interesting story, and I'm sure people could ask you lots and lots about the TV campaign, but it was successful, and one of the reasons why you are still here, I guess. Do you, in the wider kind of hotel marketplace, do you consider the giants Booking.com and Expedia as competitors or not?
No, not really. I think we feel like we do a very, very different job from them. So if you think about, we have 50 million members globally. So those are people who are signed up to receive email from us, which is an enormous push marketing platform. So everything we do is about exposing our product to our customers on our schedule. So our customers have given us permission to speak to them, and we send them what we think are appropriate, inspiring offers. The big OTAs service people almost entirely who have needs-based missions. So I need to go to this place on these dates, and it creates a different type of customer. So for us, when we broadcast our offers to people, what we're doing is trying to put an inspiring product in front of somebody that will prompt them to do something they weren't otherwise planning to do. Yeah. So we know from our research that 9 out of 10 people who book with us say they wouldn't have booked the trip if they hadn't seen the email offer from us. So 9 out of 10 of our trips are completely incremental. And that's the one thing that completely separates us from the OTA space.
Isn't that risky, though?
In what sense?
In the sense that you're just relying on people's impulse rather than...
Well, I think the thing is...
What happens if you get to a situation where, I don't know, the economy or something like that, where people just, their discretionary spend just goes because then you're at the mercy of it?
Well, I think actually, interestingly, we seem to have discovered that we're almost... you could argue we're counter-cyclical, because in a downturn, actually, the deals that we get from hotels whose occupancy has tanked are absolutely incredible. And let's not forget, what we're effectively doing is we're making luxury travel affordable for a huge array of people. It's not super expensive product we're talking about here. So actually, what we've seen in a downturn is absolutely no change really in our patterns of demand, because I think any weakness in consumer spending is more than made up for by the extra strength of the deals that we get.
Okay. going towards, into the into the hotel element of what you do then. So what challenges have you found with persuading hotels to use you? Have there been some that have just said, no way, that just cheapens the product? Or
Yeah, I think there are definitely hotels who've had concerns. There are some hotels, and it's a relatively small number, who have very, very strong policies about discounting full stop. And the very, very, very upper end of the 5-star segment who have got very significant concerns about where they appear and who they appear next to. And don't get me wrong, we feature a lot of great quality 5-star hotels, along with an amazing array of 4-star hotels too. The vast majority of hoteliers, and revenue managers really specifically, get the fact that we're bringing them incremental customers. And what they need to do is to be able to shift the 20-30% of their rooms that they can't sell at the best available rate. So they hold their best available rate in the open market, and by selling through us, they can start to get into that remaining occupancy without risking cannibalizing their existing sales. And that's the absolute key for the hotelier, is to be confident that by discounting through us, they're not going to be damaging their existing, what they would have sold anyway at best available.
Okay, so is there a majority of the inventory that you have on Secret Escapes? Is it for a stay within a month, or is it?
No, and it's a really key point, actually. So a lot of people have the misconception that we're a last-minute business, but if you look at any of the offers on our site, there'll be absolute minimum of 3 months of availability, and a lot of offers will be going 6 to 9 months into the future.
Okay.
And if I can just explain why, it's because the revenue manager knows that in 3 months' time, they will still be only selling 70-80% of their rooms. Right. And in 6 months' time, it's exactly the same. So they can quite strategically sell forward, knowing that proportion of their rooms are most likely not going to sell at best available rate. And they need a discrete channel through which they can sell them.
Yeah, that was going to be the question, is how, do they know that far in advance?
Yeah.
That they're going to have to go down their own. So given that you said there are some hotels that have a policy about not discounting.
Yeah.
And now that you've been around for quite a long time, do you still find that it's certain chains, certain hotels that come back, or is there a fairly high degree of churn?
Actually, we do. I mean, inevitably we have to jump through a lot of hoops anytime we do a fundraising round. And one of the analyses we always have to do is a supplier cohort analysis. So, of our key suppliers of the last couple of years, how many are still key suppliers now? And the numbers are always in the 90s. So our retention rates of our key suppliers are huge. And the key thing is that people understand, hotel revenue managers understand that the incrementality of the business that we're bringing, and it's a hugely valuable marketing service which can't be provided by the rest of the OTA, by the OTA universe. And so no, it's not particularly difficult to maintain a great relationship with a hotel once you've demonstrated incrementality to them.
And presumably because of the length of time that you've been around and the concept of discounting or flash sales has been around, there's less educating now than you would have had to do 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we know what that is.
And because the market for travel deals has massively simplified, and there aren't anywhere near the number of poor quality sites out there who are attempting to do the same thing but do it badly, or merchandising a great hotel alongside a vacuum cleaner, or it's a much cleaner environment now that's much better understood, and people in the hotel industry, I think, really understand where we fit in that ecosystem now.
Changing tack a little bit, I mean, what did you make of Airbnb's announcements 6, 7, 8 weeks ago that they were going to open up officially? Some hotels have been on Airbnb for quite some time, but they would start working with channel managers like SiteMinder to take hotel inventory in and become another channel. Just generally, what's your view on that?
I mean, I think there is an air of inevitability about that, in that I think we overestimate just how much consumers understand the nuances of individual online brands. I think, do consumers really understand the benefits of Booking versus Expedia? I mean, clearly the difference between Airbnb and Expedia, broadly consumers will understand, but I don't think it's at all impossible that lots of consumers will think of Airbnb as a great place to go and get your holiday accommodation without knowing or even considering that it's 100% exclusively private rental accommodation. And so I think for the consumer, it's not that big a leap, personally.
Yep.
And when you think about it from an industry perspective, it makes total sense that you would maximize your available appropriate inventory to give to your customers. So I think it makes a lot of sense. You've got to be careful about your overall brand positioning, for sure. But I don't personally see a great problem. I guess I'm probably not a brand purist, if you like, in that I'm quite pragmatic, and I think brands can be stretched.
Okay, if you were Mr. Fogel or Mr. Åkerström, though, Booking Holdings and Expedia Group, as we now must call them respectively, do you think they're worried about what Airbnb is doing?
To the extent that they're worried about anybody, yes, I would imagine they probably, that's one of the ones that would be on their radar as a concern, because ultimately, what are you doing as Airbnb? Fundamentally, you are a search engine for primarily holiday accommodation, but you're a search engine for holiday accommodation product. Booking Expedia have obviously got big business travel components to them, but fundamentally, from a leisure traveler perspective, you're fulfilling the same fundamental need. People are searching for product that they need to, accommodation that they need to stay in when they go away on leisure trips.
Okay, so if I was lucky enough to own a mansion, so a luxury property,
yeah,
and rather than using Airbnb, I wanted to come to you because of your brand, and people go there for luxury accommodation. Would that be an opportunity at some point for people, for private owners, do you think?
If you had a mansion with 20 bedrooms, then yes, it would be.
Okay.
Because we could sell each room individually. And effectively, the key thing that we need to solve is having multiple instances of the same type of inventory. So the fundamental obstacle that we have with private holiday accommodation is where you're selling a house or a flat as an individual unit, we've only got one of them to sell. Mm-hmm. So it takes quite a lot of effort to merchandise that one property, and we're only one deep. And so until we can figure out how to merchandise several similar properties such that we're 10 or 20 deep in each type of property, it's quite inefficient for us to sell. I would love to think that we will crack that problem at some point in time, because there's no reason why a fantastic country house or an amazing flat in the middle of London isn't an inspirational a piece of accommodation in just the same way our hotels are.
Okay. Back to Secret Escape specifically then, how do you grow? Is it just by launching into new markets?
So it's a combination of things. If you think about an existing market, we grow by a couple of ways. One of which is adding new members, and we've got huge amount of headroom to add new members in many, many markets. But then also by adding new features and increasing the efficiency and the return from each of the members in our cohort. So for example, adding, as we did last year, the ability to book flights alongside hotels. It's what we call Hotel Plus. So you have a hotel deal, and during the process you can add a flight using dynamic packaging to the hotel. That increased our conversion rate way into double digits of percentage points.
Great that it increased the conversion rate, but were many people using it as a service?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've gone from, I think, roughly speaking, the attach rates of a flight to a hotel for international hotels are somewhere in the late 20s%. So getting on for a third of people who are using an individual international hotel sale and now adding a flight to that without having to go externally to get that flight. And not only did it improve the conversion rate, it also lengthened the number of nights of stay, which actually, I have to confess, surprised me. But it's had both of those combined effects.
Why did it surprise you?
I just didn't see why, if you were going to buy the hotel anyway, just because you found flights on our site rather than having to go to an external flight site, I didn't really see why that would mean that you were going to stay for longer. I'm still, to be honest, slightly perplexed by it. But back to the original point, adding features that improve the repeat purchase rate of our existing members, plus adding new members are the basic mechanics of how we grow an existing market.
Yep.
And then, of course, we've layered on several international markets now. So we've got 21 points of sale worldwide, and those, of course, exponentially grow the potential to keep increasing.
Do you still use the TV ads in order to get new members?
Absolutely. Yeah. So in the UK and in Germany, we probably spend more than 50% of our marketing budget on TV. We use TV, I think, in virtually every significant market we operate in, to varying degrees, but certainly in Western Europe, it works very strongly everywhere we are.
Okay, and as you've grown geographically, the company's obviously got bigger. You've got more investment, etc. How do you maintain a culture? I mean, every CEO that I speak to these days that's got a business that's growing, they always say, "Oh, it's the culture."
Yeah.
It's my number one thing that worries me.
It's true, and I think particularly if it's your business, you founded the business, it's a really personal thing. And I was talking, actually, we have lunches for new starters. I had one on Monday, and I was talking about, my biggest concern in many ways is how we keep the culture. And I was explaining how we first started off, and we were in a basement, a horrible, grimy basement at the end of Hatton Wall in East London, and how at that point in time it was so easy for people around us to understand how Tom and I wanted the business run and what values we had. It wasn't just about what we wanted to achieve, the vision, but it was about how we wanted to achieve it. And a couple of years in, probably 3 years in, we realized that we had become big enough that people were no longer close enough to us, physically close enough to us, that they were hearing every day through our tone and seeing through our actions how we wanted things done. So we had to codify in a set of values and also had to lay out a vision for people that we could explain and that other people could explain to new starters, and that we could continually refer back to. So things like, one of our values is we always deliver, which refers to the fact that we're not a talking shop. We like to do our thinking. We're not just a talking shop. When we decide we're going to do something, we commit and we always deliver. And that's a classic example. You would have seen that from Tom and I when you were sitting next to us, but now we've got 800 people. You can't see that, so we need to be able to explain it.
So do you travel around to the other offices fairly regularly?
I try very hard to get around to the other major offices, so Warsaw, Berlin, Prague now, big offices with hundreds of people in them. So it's really important to...
Do you think there are any markets that the model wouldn't work?
Not that we've tried. So we've stuck quite strongly to Western Europe. We have a relatively small operation in the US, but the metrics we've seen in the US are not particularly dissimilar to the UK. I think Asia is a question mark, and the reason I'd say Asia is a question mark is because we do a lot of our communication via email, and email is a less powerful communication mechanism in certain parts of Asia.
In terms of
the push marketing platform.
Yeah.
It's a different mechanic in Asia, and that's not to say that fundamentally a push marketing business inspiring people with amazing luxury travel deals can't work, because I think it can. It's a question of what's the right mechanic to engage people, because I think probably you need a supplement to email, whether it's push notifications through app or whether it's WhatsApp notifications or whatever.
Or WeChat or something.
Yeah, WeChat, exactly. So I think that's the differential possibly in Asia, but certainly in what we would regard as westernized European type markets, no. I mean, I don't see any reason why. We've tested most of them and it works.
Okay, so let's assume finally then that you've sold the business, or you've listed on the public markets, or one of those kind of things that inevitably sees the CEO leave.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, but if you sold up and started again, what area of the travel industry would you like to try next?
The one thing which has always bugged me, and I've seen many people try and do it, is to create a search engine for inspiration. I've never seen people manage to tie in a search-led way the very beginning of the inspiration process through to product. So in a simplistic format, you can imagine how you might ask somebody 6 or 7 questions, like an old-fashioned travel agent would have done. You'd go and you'd say, I fancy a couple of weeks away in the sun. They'd ask you 5 or 6 insightful questions, and then that would enable them to narrow down and put you on the right track and give you some options. And I've never seen any business manage to get that done. I remember Expedia launched more than 10.
Inspiroscope.
It was and it clearly didn't work because they removed it.
Yeah.
I would, if you gave me a chunk of money to explore something, that's something I'd like to explore. My sense is it would probably be quite expensive because nobody so far has cracked it.
Yeah, and it would be a consumer-facing business which has its inherent challenges as well.
For sure, yeah. Although I like consumer-facing businesses.
And you've done very well at it. So thank you very much, Alex Saint, the co-founder and CEO of Secret Escapes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kev.
Thank you.